Rain always made the city sound different, like it was whispering secrets to anyone quiet enough to listen. Emily Carter was very good at being quiet. At 8 years old, she had already learned how to slip through alleyways without drawing attention, how to make coins stretch farther than they should, and how to keep her head down when the world got mean. Tonight, the rain came in cold sheets tapping against the dented cans she'd already stuffed into her torn grocery bag. Her brother Jake would be waiting in the tiny apartment above the laundromat, probably hungry, probably pretending not to be. The faster she filled the bag, the faster she could get them both something warm to eat. She ducked beneath the overpass where the highway roared above her, the sound muffled and heavy. The ground was slick with mud and rainwater, the air filled with that strange metallic smell the city gave off when it was wet. She crouched to reach a half-crushed bottle when she heard it, so faint she thought it might have been the wind. A whimper. Emily froze, her pulse quickening. She waited, listening. There it was again, small and broken like someone trying not to cry. She followed the sound toward the shadows where the concrete met the riverbank, past a pile of discarded cardboard and an overturned shopping cart. At first she thought it was a stray dog curled up in the dark. But when lightning flashed, she saw the outline of a boy, about her age, maybe a little older, huddled against the wall. His knees were pulled to his chest, his hair plastered to his forehead, his bare feet muddy and red from the cold. "Hey," Emily whispered, cautious. "You okay?" The boy jerked his head up. His eyes were wide, blue-gray like the storm above. "Don't," he gasped. "Don't let them find me." Emily blinked. "Who?" He shook his head violently. "The ones in the black car." For a moment, Emily wanted to turn and run. Strange kids saying strange things usually meant trouble. Jake always said you couldn't afford to get mixed up in other people's problems when you were barely surviving your own. But the boy's lips were trembling, and his teeth chattered so hard she could hear it over the rain. She slipped her bag off her shoulder and pulled out the frayed blanket she always carried. Her favorite, the one with the faded cartoon ducks. "Here," she said, draping it over him. "You'll get sick." He stared at her as if she were something he couldn't quite believe. "Why are you helping me?" Emily shrugged, embarrassed. "You looked cold." Thunder rumbled above them, shaking loose a few drops from the concrete beams. She glanced around, her instincts twitching. If there really were people looking for him, this wasn't a good place to be found. Across the street, the shell of an old storage shed stood half-collapsed behind a row of dumpsters. She'd hidden there before when the weather got bad. "Come on," she said, holding out her hand. "I know a better spot." The boy hesitated, glancing toward the road as if expecting someone to appear from the darkness. Then finally he took her hand. His palm was icy cold. They ran through the downpour, their feet splashing through puddles. By the time they reached the shed, Emily's hair was plastered to her face and the boy was shaking so hard she thought he might collapse. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil, but it was dry. She found an old tarp and wrapped it around him. "Thank you," he whispered. "It's okay," Emily said softly. "You can stay here tonight." Outside, the rain deepened into a steady roar. Through the cracks in the wall, thin slivers of light flickered, headlights gliding across the street above. The sleek black shape of a car moved slowly past, its tires hissing against wet pavement. Emily held her breath. A voice carried faintly through the storm, sharp and impatient. "The boy's still close. Find him before sunrise." The boy's fingers gripped her sleeve. His eyes were filled with terror. Emily didn't move, barely even breathed until the sound of the engine faded into the distance. When she finally spoke, her voice was a whisper that trembled like the rain. "Whoever they are," she said, "they're not going to find you tonight." And though she didn't know why, though every bit of common sense screamed at her to walk away, she made a silent promise right then she would keep him safe. Whatever it took, the night outside the shed pressed against the thin wooden walls like a living thing. Rain pounded in relentless sheets, the sound so loud it seemed to swallow everything else. But Emily could hear it all. The occasional squeal of tires from a far-off street, the distant bark of a dog, even the soft, uneven breathing of the boy huddled next to her. "I'm Emily," she said again, trying to keep her voice steady. "What's your name?" The boy flinched at the sound of her voice. He hadn't even introduced himself properly, as if saying his name aloud might summon the men in black cars faster. After a long pause, he whispered, "Ethan. Ethan Vance." The name didn't mean anything to Emily yet, but something about the way he said it, like it weighed 1,000 pounds, made her uneasy. They'll find you, he said, his voice barely audible over the rain, shaking as he pressed his face into the blanket. They always find me. Emily hugged her knees to her chest, trying to appear calm even though every instinct in her body screamed that danger was closer than ever. No one's going to find you here, she promised. And she meant it, because she had to mean it. Lightning flashed, revealing the shed's peeling paint and a hole in the roof where water leaked in tiny streams. She noticed something in Ethan's eyes that made her stomach twist. Pure, unfiltered fear. Not just the fear of being caught, but something darker. The fear of people who had power, money, and no mercy. I can't stay, Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. I was supposed to be safe. My stepmother. He cut himself off, gulping as if the words themselves were poisonous. Emily felt her heart tighten. Look at me, she said softly. He hesitated, then raised his gaze. You don't have to be scared here. Not with me. I'll keep you safe. No one's coming in here. She meant it with every fiber of her being, though the sound of that black car from earlier still haunted her. Something about it had been deliberate, calculating, not random. They weren't just searching. They were tracking. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then came a sharp sound, the metallic click of a car door outside. Emily froze, pressing herself closer to Ethan. His eyes went wide, and she could feel his panic radiating through the thin blanket. They know, he whispered, barely moving his lips. They always know. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her own fear from showing. We're going to stay quiet, she told him, repeating her mantra like a shield against the storm outside. She peeked through the gap in the shed's boards and saw headlights cutting through the rain. A figure stepped out, a tall man in a dark coat. He wasn't moving like someone lost. He was moving like someone who knew exactly where he was going. Emily's mind raced. Should we run? Should we stay? Every instinct screamed conflicting messages. She glanced at Ethan. He was frozen, silent except for the soft tremor of his fingers clutching the blanket. Then she remembered the small tin box she carried in her backpack, the one with the leftover sandwiches and a tiny flashlight. Quietly, she handed it to Ethan. Here, just in case, she whispered. He hesitated, then took it, his hands shaking violently. She noticed something else, a small scar along his wrist, half hidden by mud and grime. You've been running a long time, haven't you? She asked softly. He looked at her, eyes glossy with unshed tears. Years, he said. They won't stop. Emily's chest tightened. She realized this was more than just a scared kid in the rain. This was someone hunted, someone powerful people wanted to control or erase. The weight of it pressed down on her, heavy enough to make her knees ache. But there was no turning back now. Thunder rolled overhead, shaking the shed like it might collapse at any moment. And then, faint but unmistakable, a voice cut through the rain from somewhere outside. Call it in. He's still out here. To not lose him. Emily's stomach dropped. This wasn't just random danger. This was a hunt. And somehow, impossibly, she and Ethan were right in the center of it. She tightened her grip on his small shoulder. Listen to me, she whispered, voice barely audible. We're going to get through this. But you have to trust me. Don't make a sound. Not a single one. Ethan nodded slowly, fear and something like awe in his wide eyes. Emily swallowed her own terror and settled herself behind him. Outside, the rain continued to pound. Somewhere in the city, men in black cars were searching, their voices slicing through the storm. And in the shadows of that old, broken shed, two children waited, breathing quietly, hearts pounding in sync with the relentless drum of the rain. Tonight, the world outside had become a predator, and they were its hunted. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, but the city smelled like wet asphalt and electricity, a warning Emily couldn't ignore. The shed, once a sanctuary, had become a cage that creaked with every gust of wind. She knew they couldn't stay, not for long. The black car wasn't just nearby. It had been deliberate, patient, and calculating. Someone was hunting them, and the shadows whispered it. We can't stay here, Emily whispered, tugging Ethan's hand. He flinched, clutching the blanket tighter, but he followed. We have to move now. Where? He asked, his voice trembling. They'll find us no matter what. Emily didn't answer. She didn't have a map, a plan, or a way to summon help. She only had the streets she knew, the alleyways, the fire escapes. The hidden doorways between buildings that only kids like her could navigate. Her pulse was a steady drum in her ears as she guided him out into the dim glow of the streetlights. The city seemed different at night now, sinister even, with shadows stretched long and dark by the flickering lamps. Every sound made them jump. The slap of wet shoes against the pavement, the distant honk of a horn, a trash can tipping over in the wind. Emily felt Ethan's hand trembling in hers, small and fragile, and she gripped it tighter. They slipped through a narrow alley, pressed against the cold brick, until they reached an abandoned parking lot. Rusted cars leaned at impossible angles. Broken glass glittered like ice, and the smell of mildew hung heavy in the air. Emily crouched behind a dumpster, trying to catch her breath. I can't believe this is happening," Ethan whispered, his words trembling as much as his body. Emily looked at him. The pale light from a broken street lamp reflected off his wet hair and wide, terrified eyes. Something about him didn't fit. His clothes, fine, expensive-looking, even in the mud, seemed out of place in the grime of the alley. But the fear was real. That she couldn't deny. "We're going to make it," she said firmly, though she could feel her own fear curling around her chest. "But we have to move fast. Don't look back, and don't make a sound." A shadow shifted across the edge of the lot. Emily froze, pressed Ethan against her side. Two men in dark coats were advancing, the sound of their boots deliberate, heavy like predators marking territory. One carried a flashlight, sweeping it slowly, methodically. The other held something small in his hand. A radio, a phone, Emily wasn't sure which. "They're close," Ethan whispered. His voice was barely audible, but every word cut sharper than the rain. Emily's mind raced. They couldn't outrun men like this, not in their little legs and soaked clothes. They needed a plan, something unexpected. She scanned the lot. At the far end, a chain-link fence leaned dangerously over a dumpster. She nudged Ethan forward, whispering instructions. "Climb, hold on tight. I'll go first, then pull you up." He obeyed, fumbling but determined. Emily's heart hammered in her chest as she helped him scramble over. The fence rattled under their weight, a metal groan that made her stomach drop. Footsteps thundered behind them. The men had noticed. Flashlight beams swept past the dumpster, then paused, lingering too close. Emily and Ethan froze, pressed against the fence like shadows themselves. "They're going to," Ethan began, but Emily put a finger to her lips. "Shh." Time stretched. Rain pattered against their backs. The flashlight beam swung closer, slower now, almost mocking. Emily could feel Ethan's small body trembling against hers, his grip like iron on her sleeve. She whispered, not a sound, not a word. "You trust me?" He nodded, wide-eyed, silent. Then, almost like a miracle, the men moved on. The sound of their boots faded, swallowed by the city. Emily exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in her muscles unravel just enough to think again. "Come on," she whispered. "We're not safe yet, but we're still alive. That's the first step." They dropped into the alley on the other side of the fence, mud squelching underfoot. Emily led them past piles of broken crates through narrow corridors between abandoned buildings, each shadow a potential threat. Her mind raced with every possibility. The black car returning, someone spotting them, the rain washing away footprints, but not the danger. As they turned a corner, Ethan stumbled and nearly fell. Emily caught him, steadying his shaking body. "You're stronger than you think," she said softly. "If we can make it through tonight, nothing will scare us again." He looked up at her, eyes wide and wet. And for a moment, the fear wavered, replaced by something almost like hope. But Emily knew better than to relax. Outside, the world waited, dark and patient, and somewhere in the city, the men in black were plotting their next move. And somewhere in Ethan's chest, a secret waited, one that would change everything if it was ever revealed. The city at night had a heartbeat, and Emily could feel it under her skin. Every dripping gutter, every distant siren, every shutter banging in the wind sounded like it belonged to the hunt. She and Ethan moved as shadows, pressed against walls, their wet clothes sticking to their skin, hearts hammering with every step. "I don't understand," Ethan whispered, his voice raw. "How can you just know where to go?" Emily didn't answer immediately. There was no time for explanations. Not with the black car hunting them, not with men so close they could almost smell her fear. She had learned to survive in this city by noticing what others overlooked. Broken fire escapes, unlocked doors, gaps between fences, abandoned storefronts with shadowed corners. "You pay attention," she finally said, "and you move fast. That's it. Nothing fancy. Just survive." Ethan nodded, gripping her hand like it was a lifeline. His teeth chattered from the cold and from adrenaline, and Emily felt a pang of guilt. He was just a kid, his life a storm he hadn't asked for, and yet here he was, following her into alleys slick with rain, past dumpsters spilling rotting refuse through narrow passages where a single misstep could mean capture. Or worse. They turned a corner, and the streetlights flickered like warning beacons. A sleek black car sat idling at the end of the block, headlights off, but the engine whispered menace into the wet air. Emily froze, flattening herself against the brick wall. Ethan pressed close, eyes wide, breath catching. "They're waiting," he murmured, voice trembling. Emily's mind raced. If they tried to run, the car would catch them in seconds. If they stayed, they'd be sitting ducks. Then she saw it. An old service door, rusted but slightly ajar, beneath the awning of a shuttered deli. She pulled Ethan toward it, silently praying it would hold. The door creaked as they slipped inside. Darkness swallowed them instantly. Thick and suffocating, but it was better than the rain and the car outside. Emily's hands found Ethan's again, squeezing it reassuringly. "Shh," she whispered. "No sound. Breathe slowly." Inside, the deli smelled of mold, old bread, and something metallic that made Emily's stomach turn. She guided Ethan to a corner behind a stack of empty boxes. They crouched there, listening. The city roared above them, but inside the only sound was their shallow breathing. Then it came, a soft tapping, deliberate and slow from the door. Emily froze. The sound repeated and she realized it wasn't a coincidence. Someone had followed them. Ethan's hand went ice cold in hers. They found us," he whispered. Emily's pulse hammered in her ears. "Maybe," she said, though her voice trembled despite her effort to sound calm. "But we're not going anywhere. Not yet." The tapping grew louder, followed by the faint hum of a voice. "We know you're in there," someone said, soft, controlled, and terrifyingly calm. "Step out and this will be easy. Resist and it won't be." Ethan's face went pale and Emily could see his small frame trembling with terror. She had never seen anyone so young, so visibly afraid. Not even Jake when he'd caught her sneaking into the alley earlier. But beneath the fear, she saw something else, determination. A spark of survival that refused to die. Emily's mind raced. There had to be another way out. She looked around the deli and noticed a narrow hatch leading down to the basement, rusted, half hidden under a pile of crates. It was a long shot, but their only shot. "Follow me," she whispered, and Ethan nodded, still clutching her hand like a lifeline. They moved slowly, deliberately, toward the hatch. The tapping at the door became a rhythmic threat, echoing against the walls. Emily's heart felt like it would explode as they descended into the darkness. The basement smelled of wet earth and mildew, the air thick and suffocating. She whispered again, "Don't make a sound." Not a single sound. Ethan's small nod was barely visible in the dark, but she felt it as if it were a promise. Down in the basement, the darkness wrapped around them like a cloak, and for a moment they allowed themselves to breathe. Then from above, the unmistakable voice came again. "He can't have gone far. Check everywhere." Emily's stomach dropped. The men weren't leaving. They weren't giving up. And now, trapped below ground with only a sliver of hope, she realized something terrifying. Tonight, survival wasn't just about running. It was about outthinking predators who had already decided they were expendable. Ethan pressed against her, shivering. I didn't think anyone would help me," he whispered, voice shaking. Emily tightened her grip, trying to be stronger than she felt. "You're not alone," she said. "Not anymore. We'll get through this. I promise. But we have to be smart. We can't just hide forever. They'll keep coming." Thunder rumbled somewhere deep in the city, echoing down the streets and through the basement walls. Outside, the rain continued to hammer the pavement, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pounding in Emily's chest. Somewhere beyond the shadows, the black car waited. Men in suits with intentions darker than the night itself waited. And for the first time, Ethan understood that his life wasn't just in danger. It was being hunted like prey. And only Emily's courage and cunning could keep him alive. They crouched there together, the air thick with fear and anticipation, and Emily made a silent vow. Whatever it took, she would get them out alive. Because if they didn't, no one would. The basement was cold, damp, and smelled of decay, but it was better than the storm above. Emily pressed her back against the wall, her fingers still locked around Ethan's small, shaking hand. Each tick of the dripping water sounded like a countdown. Outside, the city's roar was replaced by a more precise, terrifying rhythm, the hum of tires, the faint click of boots on pavement. the occasional voice calling out a name that sent shivers down Emily's spine. "Ethan Vance, we know you're there." Ethan flinched at every whisper. Why are they after me?" he muttered, eyes wide in the gloom. Emily didn't answer at first. It was a complicated question, one she wasn't sure she fully understood. But she knew the answer didn't matter tonight. What mattered was survival. "Because they think you belong to them," she said finally, voice low, steady. "And they're wrong." He leaned into her, shivering. I just wanted to be normal. I didn't ask for any of this." Emily swallowed hard. "None of us do," she whispered. "But normal isn't what keeps you alive right now. Smart does. Quiet does. Moving without being seen does." The first movement came like a shadow creeping across the walls. A flashlight beam pierced the basement window, swinging slowly, methodically. Emily's heart slammed into her ribs. "They're checking," she breathed. "We have to be ready." She led Ethan to a pile of old crates that formed a precarious barrier near the far wall. She tugged at a loose floorboard, revealing a narrow crawlspace beneath. It was tight, small enough that only one person could fit comfortably, but it was their only way out. "Crawl," she whispered. "Follow me exactly. Don't make a sound." Ethan's nod was frantic but determined. His bare feet scraped against the wet floor as he moved, his small frame quivering like a leaf in a storm. Emily went first, her body curling into the narrow space. The darkness closed around them, suffocating yet protective. She felt Ethan slip behind her, his soft breathing the only sound. Then the basement door creaked. Emily froze. She held her breath, willing Ethan to do the same. Footsteps, deliberate, heavy, measured, echoed through the room. The flashlight beam swung dangerously close to the crates, painting long, jagged shadows across the wall. "They're in here," Ethan whispered, barely audible. His voice trembled, sharp with terror. Emily's hand tightened on his shoulder. "Not for long," she whispered back, forcing confidence into her own voice. "Not for long." The intruder paused, scanning the crates, muttering into a phone. "Check every corner. He's hiding." The beam swung perilously close to the crawlspace entrance. Emily's heart raced. Every instinct screamed that a single sound could betray them. She remembered the small tin box she had grabbed in the alley, the one with scraps of food and a weak flashlight. Slowly, with her foot, she nudged it under the crawlspace, creating a small distraction. A soft clang echoed. The intruder cursed, stepping away to investigate. The flashlight swung elsewhere. Emily exhaled slowly. "Good. Move," she whispered to Ethan, and they crawled deeper into the darkness. Every inch a battle between fear and necessity. The crawlspace opened into an old maintenance tunnel. Narrow and suffocating, the walls slick with condensation. Water dripped from above, landing in tiny splashes that sounded like gunfire in the stillness. Emily could feel Ethan trembling against her, but he wasn't stopping. He followed her silently, and for a moment they were shadows slipping past a world that wanted to destroy them. Then the tunnel widened into a hidden courtyard, abandoned for decades. Rusted playground equipment loomed in the shadows, and ivy strangled what little sunlight might have ever touched the bricks. Emily stopped, letting Ethan peek out. For the first time he saw the city from above, not trapped by walls or alleys. And for the first time he let himself hope. But hope was fleeting. From the far side of the courtyard, the unmistakable sound of tires on wet stone made them spin. Two black SUVs emerged, headlights slicing through the mist. Figures in dark coats stepped out, moving with terrifying precision. They were searching, not blindly. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Ethan's face went pale. They know, he whispered. Emily pressed a finger to her lips. "We move," she said, voice firm, even though every part of her wanted to scream. "Now." They darted across the courtyard, shadows among shadows, every heartbeat a thunderclap. One of the men spotted a flicker of movement, and a flashlight beam swung dangerously close. Emily grabbed Ethan, pulling him low, diving behind a rusted jungle gym. The beam passed inches from their hiding spot. "Don't move," she hissed. Ethan's small body was pressed to hers, trembling violently but silent. For the first time, Ethan whispered something that Emily hadn't expected. I'm not just a normal kid." His voice quivered, but there was a weight behind it, a secret he had carried too long. "If they catch me, it won't just be trouble. It'll ruin everything." Emily glanced at him, her heart hammering. "Then we don't let them," she said. "No matter what. Together." And for the first time that night, in the heart of a city that had become a predator, Ethan nodded. But the men in black didn't give up. Their movements were precise, coordinated. One of the SUVs fired its engine, tires screeching as it cut through the courtyard. Emily and Ethan ran again, hearts pounding, feet slick on the wet stone, adrenaline sharpening every sense. Behind them, the world was a blur of rain, shadows, and the unmistakable hum of danger. Alive, hungry, and relentless, and in that moment, Emily realized something chilling. Tonight wasn't about hiding anymore. Tonight they were running through a storm that would not end until someone, either them or their hunters, was broken. The rain had stopped, but the night was far from safe. The city smelled like wet concrete and gasoline, and the streets gleamed under the dull glow of flickering streetlights. Emily led Ethan through a maze of alleyways, heart hammering in rhythm with his. Each corner, each shadow felt alive with menace, and she knew their pursuers hadn't given up. They were close and they were patient. "We have to keep moving," Emily whispered, voice tight with tension. "They're still looking. Every step counts." Ethan nodded, but his eyes were distant. He glanced at the distant skyline shimmering faintly through the mist and whispered, "I shouldn't be out here. I'm not like other kids. I don't belong in this part of the city." Emily didn't answer immediately. She had seen wealthy kids before, kids with fancy clothes and silver spoons, but Ethan carried it differently. There was a quiet, almost haunted weight to him that made her chest tighten. "It doesn't matter who you are," she said finally. "What matters is that you're alive, and I'm not letting them get you." For a moment he allowed himself to relax, the smallest spark of trust flickering in his wide, frightened eyes. But the sound of an engine interrupted it, the familiar, menacing hum of the black SUVs. Emily's stomach sank. They had been careful, silent, invisible, but nothing could outrun the long reach of someone who had planned this hunt. "Go," she hissed, tugging Ethan toward a side street that led to a half-abandoned construction site. They darted through mud and rubble, their soaked clothes clinging to their bodies, hearts hammering like war drums. Every footstep sounded louder than it should have. Every shadow could be the end. The SUVs rolled onto the street behind them, tires spraying water in wide arcs. Headlights swept the alleys like searchlights. One of the men in black coats stepped out, scanning with a flashlight. Emily pressed Ethan into the corner of a half-built wall, hoping the darkness and debris would hide them. "They're not leaving," Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. "They're not stopping." Emily shook her head, determination flaring. "We'll make them stop. We just have to be smart." She scanned the site, eyes flicking over steel beams and unfinished scaffolding. A plan formed, a desperate, dangerous, brilliant plan. She pointed upward. "Climb, now. There's a catwalk above us. If we can get to the roof, we might be able to lose them in the maze of scaffolding." Ethan hesitated. The climb was treacherous, the steel slick with rain. But Emily's hand found his, guiding him with a firmness he couldn't refuse. Step by step, they ascended. Hearts in their throats, muscles screaming, the city below like a jagged labyrinth of shadows and danger. Above, the catwalk swayed with every gust of wind. A single misstep could send them plummeting to the ground below. But the men in black were relentless, shouting orders into radios, coordinating their movements. Emily and Ethan had only a few precious minutes to escape. Suddenly, Ethan stumbled, nearly slipping off the narrow beam. Emily caught him just in time, gripping him tightly. "You okay?" she whispered, voice tense but calm. He nodded, but fear radiated from him like heat. They want me dead," he muttered. "Or worse. They want everything I have," Emily froze. "Everything you have?" His eyes darted down at the city below, then back at her. I'm not just a kid. My dad, he left me everything, and my stepmother. She'll do anything to take it." Emily's stomach twisted. Her mind tried to reconcile the frightened, barefoot boy she had found beneath the bridge with the words he was saying. Billionaire, inherited fortune, dangerous stepmother. The puzzle pieces clicked together in a terrifying picture. The catwalk creaked and a flashlight beam from below swung dangerously close. Emily pressed Ethan down, whispering, "Stay low. Don't move." Not a sound, the men below shouted, frustrated. "He has to be here." "Check the scaffolding." Emily's chest tightened. Every instinct screamed that they had been discovered. But then she saw it. An unfinished elevator shaft, dark and yawning. A risky escape, but maybe their only chance. "Follow me," she whispered urgently. They crept to the edge, peering into the abyss. The drop was terrifying, but at the bottom, a pile of tarps and old construction debris promised a safer landing. Ethan's face went pale. I can't. Emily grabbed him firmly. You can. You have to. Trust me. Step by step, they lowered themselves, hearts hammering, muscles straining. The drop was perilous, but they landed with a grunt, mud and debris cushioning the fall just enough. Behind them, shouts erupted. The men in black had spotted their movement. The chase was far from over, but Emily felt a flicker of triumph. They had survived the first confrontation, had outsmarted predators who thought money could bend the world to their will. Ethan sat in the mud, soaked, exhausted, and trembling. He looked at Emily, eyes wide, almost reverent. You saved me, he whispered. Emily shrugged, mud on her face, hands trembling. No, we survived together. And in that moment, something changed. Ethan wasn't just a scared boy anymore. He was a child with a secret powerful enough to topple the world that hunted him. And Emily realized she wasn't just protecting a kid. She was protecting a key to a dangerous, glittering empire. And every step forward would pull them deeper into a storm far larger than either of them could have imagined. Above, the night sky was clearing, revealing shards of moonlight. But below, the city waited, alive with shadows, engines, and men who wouldn't stop until they had taken everything from the boy who shouldn't have existed in a place like this. And Emily knew, deep in her bones, that the real danger, the kind that didn't care about rain, mud, or alleyways, was only just beginning. The city lay silent beneath a sky streaked with pale moonlight. Rain had ceased, leaving the streets slick and reflective, a mirror for the shadows that moved like predators. Emily and Ethan crouched behind a stack of shipping crates at the edge of a derelict dockyard. Each heartbeat felt louder than the last, echoing in the vast emptiness around them. The distant hum of engines was a reminder. They were not alone. Ethan pressed his face into Emily's shoulder, shivering, the remnants of fear etched into every line of his small frame. I didn't think I'd get this far, he whispered. Emily shook her head, wet hair plastered to her forehead. You're stronger than you think. We both are. But this is it. We have to end this tonight, or they'll never stop hunting you. He looked up at her, eyes wide, luminous with the kind of vulnerability that could break a heart. You really think I can survive? That we can survive? She clenched her fists, forcing herself to radiate certainty. We don't have a choice. But we're not running anymore. We fight smart and we fight together. A sudden sound, tires crunching on gravel, made them both freeze. Two black SUVs crested the dockyard entrance, headlights cutting through the fog like searchlights. Figures in black suits stepped out, radios in hand, moving with the precision of trained hunters. Ethan's eyes went wide. They know this place, he muttered, voice trembling. They always know. Emily scanned the environment. Cranes, shipping containers stacked high, catwalks and scaffolding offered possibilities, but every choice was risky. One wrong move and the men in black would descend like wolves. She spotted a narrow ladder leading to the top of a container. There, she hissed, grabbing Ethan's hand. Up now! They climbed, slick steel biting into their palms, muscles straining, hearts hammering. The SUVs drew closer and the men began coordinating their approach, shouting into radios. Emily's mind raced for every possible escape route. The dockyard was a maze, but it was hers and Ethan's now. They just had to think faster than their pursuers. On top of the container they crouched, hidden in shadow. Below, the black-suited figures scanned the area with flashlights, their movements deliberate, methodical. Emily whispered, We can make it to the shipyard crane over there. It's high, too high for them to follow. We'll have a view of the whole area, and we can plan our next move. Ethan nodded, determination flickering through his fear. He clutched the gold watch on his wrist, the only thing from his father he had kept close. They can't take this from me, he muttered. Not now. Emily's chest tightened. She understood then that the boy wasn't just scared. He carried a weight far beyond his years, a legacy, a fortune, and the attention of people who would kill to possess it. And yet, here he was, trusting her. Step by step, they moved across the tops of containers, the height dizzying, the wind whipping at their faces. One misstep could be fatal. Behind them, the men in black began splitting up, coordinating to flank the containers. The hunt was tightening. Then it happened. A beam of light struck their hiding spot. One of the men had spotted them. Shouts rang out, echoing across the dockyard. Emily grabbed Ethan's hand and sprinted, leaping across the gaps between containers with the agility born of necessity. Ethan faltered, but she caught him midair, pulling him along. They reached the crane. Emily scaled the rusted metal lattice with Ethan clinging to her side. At the top, the city spread below them, lights shimmering on wet pavement. Ethan collapsed onto the platform, breathing hard, and for a moment, they allowed themselves to believe they might be safe. But then the truth hit. Ethan's identity could no longer remain hidden. The world had already seen him. Somewhere in the city, cameras, phones, and news networks were painting a different picture. He was the heir to Reynolds Enterprises, a billionaire child hunted by a stepmother hungry for power. The weight of that secret made Emily's stomach twist. "They're not just after you for money," she whispered. "They want to erase you, make it look clean. That's why they won't stop." Ethan swallowed, tears streaking his mud-smeared face. "I didn't ask for this," he said, voice breaking. I just wanted to live like a normal kid." Emily shook her head, tears in her own eyes. "Normal isn't what keeps you alive. But courage does. And you've got it, Ethan. You've got it, or you wouldn't be here." Below, the men in black coordinated their final move, climbing scaffolds and readying ropes to ascend. Emily's pulse raced. They had one shot. One. "Listen to me," she said, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "We jump to the second crane over there, the one with the cable. It'll swing us across to the ship's deck. From there, we can disappear among the containers. Trust me." Ethan's eyes widened. "That's dangerous." She met his gaze, fierce and unwavering. "Dangerous beats capture. Now hold on tight." They leapt. The cable swung like a pendulum over the dockyard, wind tearing at their clothes, hearts leaping with adrenaline. Below, the men shouted, realizing their quarry might escape. They landed on the ship deck, rolling to absorb the impact. Dust, rust, and tension filled the air. They sprinted across the steel plates, disappearing into the maze of stacked containers. Behind them, shouts faded, engines roared. But Emily knew it was only a matter of time before the hunt resumed. Finally, they stopped in a shadowed corner, chest heaving, soaked, trembling. Ethan turned to Emily, a mixture of awe and gratitude in his eyes. You saved me," he whispered. Emily shook her head, voice soft but firm. "We saved each other." Ethan looked down at the gold watch on his wrist, then up at her. "My dad, he trusted me with this, with everything. And you just trusted me too. I don't deserve that." Emily smiled faintly, exhausted. "Maybe not. But tonight it's enough that we're alive. And tomorrow we fight smart, and we fight together." Above them, the moon broke through the clouds, silver light glinting on the rain-slicked metal. Somewhere in the city, the world waited, hungry, dangerous, and unrelenting, but for this moment, two children had outwitted fate itself. And for Ethan, the billionaire boy hidden beneath the bridge, the night had finally shown him something more powerful than wealth or fear. Trust, courage, and the unbreakable bond forged in the shadow of danger.